Welcome, guys, to this new manga. We all know the common trope where the MC has a harem and all of them are trying to win him over, which stretches to almost 4 seasons. Now, meet this super confident girl. It's just the first chapter, and she has already used the forbidden technique, confession. This is a manga that proves that sometimes being direct can be the easiest and effective way to win. So let's dive in straight to the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The story begins in Class 2 on a spring day in April. Students chatted among themselves, and the narrator explained that the curtain was about to rise on a heroine race centered around a single boy. Three classmates called out to Izumi, asking him to join them for karaoke after school. With a tense look, Izumi wondered about the sudden invite. The boys excitedly shouted that girls from Serin High would be there too. It was the perfect place to show off looks and family status. Izumi immediately realized it was a mixer and muttered that they were all idiots. The trio looked confused, while Izumi brushed his hair back, thinking that if he attended, he'd end up monopolizing all the girls himself. He sighed, feeling pity for the three of them. The room went silent until Izumi awkwardly asked them to say something, or else it looked like he had just bombed. One of the boys bluntly told him that he did bomb. The others muttered among themselves. One thought he shouldn't have said that if he was going to get embarrassed. Another wondered if they even needed Izumi. And the third suggested finding someone better at talking. Annoyed, Izumi snapped that they were the ones who invited him in the first place. The narrator remarked that seeing a man get so flustered was just pathetic. Izumi groaned, thinking that Satoru and his friends were too much. Before he could finish his thought, he noticed someone approaching. Amane Amasaki appeared, greeting Izumi with a cheerful "Good morning." He recognized her instantly. It had been a while since they last met. Another girl ran up and hugged Amane, exclaiming how long it had been and asking about her modeling work. Amane explained that her father told her to broaden her horizons, so she had gone to Los Angeles with him. The girl gushed over how amazing that sounded, recalling that Amane's father was a designer. Amane smiled modestly, saying it wasn't a big deal, and mentioned that she had brought souvenirs for everyone. The class immediately erupted in excitement. When a student reminded her there was a quiz first period, Amane confidently said not to worry, she had already prepared. The class reacted with awe, calling her incredible and praising her as the top student. Amane replied that it couldn't be helped and offered to teach anyone who was struggling. The narrator explained that Amane Amasaki was a working model, a fashion icon for teenage girls, a top student, and extremely sociable. Such was her reputation in the class. Later, as Amane and Izumi studied together, a girl peeked into the classroom and called for Amane to go home. Seeing them, she teased that it was another study session. Amane apologized, but the girl turned to Izumi and said it was a waste of effort since even with Amane's help, he was barely passing. Izumi told her to shut up and declared that he'd earned that recommendation no matter what. Amane apologized again and declined the invitation to hang out. The girl smiled, saying she admired how hard Amane worked and warned Izumi not to trouble her too much before leaving. As the door closed, Amane dropped her head onto the desk, apologizing in frustration and begging Izumi to teach her how to study. Izumi sighed and asked how long she planned to keep pretending to be a model student. She said it was too late to stop now. Izumi thought to himself how everyone was still fooled by her act. A brief flashback showed him handing Amane her notes back when she was absent.
He remembered how her busy schedule left her with little time to study and how just last summer she had nearly repeated a year. Since then, Izumi had been holding study sessions, drilling key points into Amane as efficiently as possible. He recalled how it all began. When her grades improved, she got overconfident and started boasting that she could teach anyone who was struggling. From that moment, there was no backing out. Izumi pointed out that she had done the same thing again today. Amane admitted that she simply couldn't refuse when people asked for help. Back in the present, Izumi was explaining a formula to her, thinking that even if she was only pretending to be a model student, the fact that she was so focused on teaching others was impressive. She must have been smart to begin with, and on top of that, she worked hard, squeezing in study time between her modeling jobs. The bell rang, and Izumi said they'd stop there for the day since he had work afterward. Amane looked up and asked if he was the one pretending to be dumb and unable to drop the act. Izui explained that he could get good grades if he tried, but life was easier when no one expected much from him. He added that just watching her work hard was enough for him. Flustered, Amane clutched his shirt and with almost a tearful expression, begged him not to tell anyone she was the one being taught. She said he was the only person she ever showed her weak side to. Izumi assured her that he knew. Amane smiled faintly and said that was all she wanted to say. Izumi then left the classroom. Left alone, Amane sighed and muttered, "Good grief," before whispering that she totally liked him. Sitting on her chair, she kicked her feet and thought that she wouldn't go this far just for a friend. Maybe it was mutual love. If one of them confessed, they could be together. But she had never dated anyone before, and she worried it might get awkward. Frustrated, she slammed her hand on the desk and told herself there was no need to rush. She knew she was the one who truly saw Izumi's charm. Even if there was no competition, the situation was just too frustrating. The scene shifted to the school assembly, where students had gathered. A speaker gave the usual speech that most ignored until he announced the next segment, a word from the student council president, Hakua Shurigiku. Hakua stepped forward and asked everyone to settle down. Introducing herself as the student council president, she reminded them that the sports festival would be held next month. Especially for the first years, she said now that they were used to school life, some might have started letting their guard down. Students whispered among themselves. One admired how dazzling Surigipu-senpai looked. Another mentioned that even Yoshino-senpai from the basketball team had been rejected by her. Someone called her the Ice Princess. Another nudged Izumi, saying that Hakua was the heiress of the famous Shurigiku confectionery and a top-ranking student nationwide. Izumi thought she truly was like a flower on a high cliff, beautiful but far beyond reach. Hakua concluded her speech, reminding everyone to avoid injuries and work together to make the sports festival memorable. As she stepped off the stage, she glanced at Izumi and smiled. Izumi said nothing. The scene shifted again. Izumi entered his house, calling out that he was home as he took off his shoes. From the kitchen, Hakua greeted him, welcoming him back from work and asking if he wanted dinner. Izumi thought to himself, "Ice Princess, huh?" In truth, Shurigiku-senpai lived next door in the same apartment complex and often dropped by to cook dinner for him. Both of their families ran major companies, and as heirs, their parents had once decided they would be engaged. However, Izumi was no longer the successor, and what was once a political engagement had become nothing more than a memory. Shurigiku was already at the table with dinner prepared. She greeted him warmly and reached out to hug him. Izumi responded politely, and she pouted before smiling brightly, patting his shoulder. There, well done." Izumi felt frustrated. To hide their former fiancé relationship, they avoided each other at school as much as possible. Yet, when they were alone, her attitude hadn't changed since middle school. Shiragiku told him that she would always be like a little brother to him. Even so, her presence overwhelmed him. Trying to compose himself, he gently pushed her back. Then she suggested they eat before the food got cold. Izumi thought that her sense of personal space was completely off when they were in private. After dinner, while washing the dishes, Izumi apologized for always troubling her. Shiragiku smiled and said it was fine since she was already making her own meals anyway. She added teasingly that older sisters naturally wanted to spoil their little brothers, which caught him off guard. Then she leaned closer and asked playfully if there was something he wanted to say about her cooking. Startled, Izumi quickly replied that it was really delicious and apologized for forgetting to say something so simple. She pouted and demanded to know how delicious. Flustered, he answered that it was the best in the world. Her eyes widened and her face turned red before she ran out shouting that she'd make it for him every day from now on. Izumi sighed, glancing at the beef stew she had made,
thinking she was way too fired up. Outside, Shiragiku smiled to herself, feeling triumphant. Using her former fiancé status, she was determined to take over his daily life, a life and wife strategy. She had pushed through her parents' opposition, pulled strings to get the apartment next door, and even had spare keys. There was no way another girl could come between them. She recalled middle school, remembering how Izumi had been the only one to see her not as the daughter of a major corporation, but simply as a girl. They had understood each other back then. After he lost his heir position, things had grown painful between them, but she still believed she was the only one who truly understood him. Determined, she promised to wait for him and vowed that someday, when she inherited her father's company, she would stand by his side until the end. The scene shifted to lunchtime at school. Students had split into two groups, the ones who brought bentos and the ones who bought food. Izumi thought no one would ever guess that his lunch was actually handmade by Shiragiku-senpai. In his mind, he could almost hear her cheerful voice saying, "Here you go, Izumi-kun, today's portion." Though he felt guilty for relying on her every day, it was a huge help for someone living alone. As he started eating, he suddenly heard someone shouting, "Don't come near Inori," and saw Satoru causing a scene. Izumi sighed, wondering what he was up to this time. The scene shifted to Satoru on his knees, calling out to Izumi. Haru Kasuga explained that some shady-looking guy had tried to approach Inori. Seeing Inori safe, Izumi kicked Satoru back into the classroom, muttering that it was probably his fault anyway. He asked why the two of them were in the second-year classroom. Despite being first years, they were already famous. Inori, the adorable little angel loved by everyone, and Haru, the fierce little devil who protected her. By some twist of fate, both were his club juniors. Inori asked softly if there was club activity that day. Izumi replied that she could have just messaged him. She explained that they were both free, so Izumi agreed it would be a club day. Inori asked if he had read the book she recommended the other day. Izumi apologized, explaining that he had bought it, but hadn't gotten around to reading it yet. Suddenly, Haru stepped in front of him. Startled, Izumi called her name, and Haru glared, telling him not to get all lovey-dovey with Inori. Even small talk was off limits. The two girls left, and Haru turned back to call him a damn leecher. Another student peeked over and asked if they were fighting. When the bell rang, the scene shifted to the library prep room, where everyone sat quietly reading. Izumi reflected that their Literature Appreciation Society was really just 3 people reading and chatting. He remembered when he was the only member left and had planned to dissolve the club once the seniors graduated. By chance, 2 first-years joined, forcing him to keep it alive. In the present, Izumi observed Inori reading with full focus, while the girl next to her gamed nonstop. The gamer looked up and asked what was wrong. Izumi dismissed her, thinking she didn't even pretend to read and only joined to protect Inori. Suddenly, the gamer declared, "The culprit is the little sister." Inori reacted with frustration, and Izumi froze, silently praying it wasn't true. Closing his book, he protested that she was wrong. The gamer smirked and claimed she hated spoilers, while Izumi argued that even fake ones still counted.
He scolded her for making him paranoid for no reason and wondered if she even knew what the club was supposed to be. Annoyed, Izumi dragged his chair closer to her. Flustered, he confronted Haru, accusing her of always treating him like an enemy and forbidding him from going near Inori. He teased that maybe she just wanted his attention. Inori watched quietly from the side. Izumi reached out and tilted Haru's chin, teasing that she just couldn't be honest. Haru blushed deeply, flustered by his sudden closeness. Izumi backed off and warned that if she kept acting like that, someone might actually jump her one day. Furious, Haru threw a book at him, shouting, "You pervert, go die!" The impact knocked him over. Getting up, Izumi muttered that he expected a "what are you acting cool for, you creep" kind of comeback, realizing he went too far. He picked up the thrown book and noticed that it was the same one he'd been reading. Haru sat gloomily in silence. Another student commented that it had been Haru's fault, teasing that she'd read ahead just to stay on the same page as him and completely missed the point. She smirked and said Haru clearly wanted Izumi to fuss over her that badly. Haru protested, but her thoughts drifted back to middle school, remembering the punkish boy she had a crush on, getting carried away just because he looked a little cool. Back then, when she tried to act tough, Izumi stepped in, teasing her for scaring the little kittens. He ended up getting lightly beaten by a couple of guys for it. In the present, Haru sighed to herself. Even though she called it fate, her senpai didn't remember her at all, and only acted sweet with Inori, while treating her completely differently, just like always. It was infuriating. The scene shifted to Izumi entering the school, where a girl stood ahead of him. Someone whispered to Amane that he's right there, and Amane's flustered quickly denied it. Another voice from the stairs remarked that Izumi always passes by at this time, and maybe today they'd finally have the courage to greet him. Haru, standing nearby, muttered that she didn't care about senpai or anything like that, while her friend teased that it might just be an excuse to say hi to him alone. As Izumi walked by, 3 girls greeted him. One said, "Good morning, Izumi-chi." Another added, "Good morning, Izumi-kun." And Haru followed with, "Senpai, good morning." Izumi glanced at them, but before he could respond, one girl suddenly stepped forward and blurted out, "I love you. Please go out with me." Everyone froze. The other girls stared in shock as Nanonashi, the girl who confessed, held Izumi's hand tightly. The narrator remarked that there was only one surefire way to win the heroine race, by being able to say "I love you" properly. The moment marked the beginning of the Izumi Suzune chapter. The other 3 girls reacted in disbelief, each thinking to themselves that they wouldn't hand him over to anyone. The narrator concluded that the outcome of the heroine race was still unknown. The battle between the losing heroines and the one brave enough to confess had only just begun.
The recap of the previous chapter begins, introducing the high school student. The summary shows how he helped the school idol study, had the beautiful student council president cook for him, and was teased by his junior. Then, one day, he received a sudden and unexpected confession from a mysterious girl. About a week earlier, a student was walking alone down the school hallway, carrying a heavy box and regretting not having asked it to be delivered directly to her home. The girl felt lost in her new school, with no one she could rely on, until a voice asked what was wrong. Leaning casually against the lockers, he watched her, noticing that she seemed to be struggling. He then approached with a charming gesture, calling her an adorable kitten. The girl was left speechless, her face frozen in total shock. She thought this must be how people in the city act, and now she understood why they say the city is scary. While the boy continued striking exaggerated poses, he quickly fumbled and apologized, explaining that he just thought she looked like she was in trouble. Looking at his outstretched hand, the girl concluded that he was kind of weird, but didn't seem dangerous. He took her heavy bag, saying that a girl shouldn't be carrying something like that, and asked what was going on. She explained that she came to pick up her books and finalize her transfer paperwork, but her father had an unexpected work issue. Over the phone, he learned that she was a transfer student assigned to Class 2B right next to his. He spoke with Sun, explaining the situation and assuring that he would handle everything. After hanging up, the boy informed the confused girl that her things would be sent to her home. He then said he'd take her bag to the teacher's office for her, mentioning Sensei from the career guidance office. The girl was amazed, thinking he had solved all her problems in an instant. while he pointed her toward the school gate. Her eyes sparkled as she noticed a familiar phone charm hanging from his device. Surprised, she suddenly exclaimed about the charm. It was identical to the one attached to her own phone. He commented that he didn't think anyone else still had one since it was from a character that was popular years ago. She explained that someone bought it for her because they liked it, even though her friends didn't recognize it. With a gentle look, she said she'd always liked it and kept it ever since, to which he replied that he understood. Blushing slightly, the boy thanked her, saying he was really happy. The girl didn't understand why he thanked her, but his dazzling smile under the setting sun made her heart race. As the two matching charms were shown, she wondered if this was what it felt like to fall in love. In classroom 2A. After class on the day she confessed to him, he sits at his desk in despair, wondering how things ended up like this. He laments that she saw everything and spread rumors, resulting in constant teasing from his classmates all day. Sighing, the boy complains that everyone is overreacting just because someone confessed to him. With an irritated expression, she remarks that, as expected of a popular guy, he knows how to handle it, but wonders why he looks so grumpy. She confronts him, saying he definitely doesn't look like someone who isn't bothered by the situation at all. The girl then sighs and suggests, maybe he's not that annoyed after all. He defends himself, explaining that he only met the girl when she came to pick up her transfer papers, and her sudden confession completely caught him off guard. With a teasing look, she asks if he didn't flirt with her right away, saying something like, "What a cute kitten, huh?" Completely taken aback and sweating nervously, the boy is left speechless by her accusation. A classmate is shocked, wondering if it's true that he actually said that. She pretends not to care, saying she doesn't mind who he dates and tells him to be happy with his new transfer student. He tries to explain that just because she's cute doesn't mean he would accept her confession right away. Surprised, the girl exclaims that that's exactly how it works, leaving him dumbfounded. The boy tries to argue that dating is about getting to know each other first, but she cuts him off, calling his view of romance old-fashioned.
His grows irritated, unable to respond, grumbling that she's always saying teasing things, and now this. Letting out a sigh, the boy gives up and suggests they begin their study session. As she arranges her materials, she suddenly has an epiphany, wondering if that could be it. She reasons that someone who's supposed to be single gets confessed to by a cute transfer student and then comes to tell her about it, which can only mean he's actually trying to confess to her. Blushing deeply, the girl imagines him admitting that the person he truly likes is her. She hits her chest, declaring she knew from the start what kind of guy he was, leaving him baffled by her sudden change in attitude. Then a voice calls out from behind him. It's the transfer student asking if she can join them, much to the girl's displeasure. With an annoyed look, she warns her that someone's already there and that she's being way too forward. The transfer student apologizes shyly, looking embarrassed. Suddenly, she grabs the girl's hands, recognizing her as the model. Excited, the girl confirms it's really her, exclaiming that she's super popular where she's from. The new girl praises her, saying she's even prettier in person and so slender she doesn't need filters, instantly boosting her confidence. The girl responds with a smug grin, while the boy thinks to himself that she's far too easy to flatter and that the new girl seems surprisingly nice. Impressed, the transfer student asks if he's also smart, and he replies that she's been teaching him. Overwhelmed, the boy tries to excuse himself, apologizing and suggesting they continue tomorrow. The transfer student asks if she can join their study session, leaving the girl visibly shocked. She explains that the lessons at her new school are more advanced, and asks if it would be a bother. He thinks the situation is bad, and since he can't reveal he's actually the one teaching, he decides to pretend to be the student today. The girl protests furiously that she absolutely shouldn't join, wondering why her own mood is so unstable today. Her next implication, that the study session might be inappropriate, leaves him completely stunned. The boy leans closer and whispers, asking seriously what's gotten into her and what he thinks will happen if she keeps this up. Turning toward the transfer girl, she advises her to make sure he feels the same before trying anything. He nervously agrees that she's right, only for the girl to scold him for being cruel and misleading someone. She then demands eagerly that they clear things up right now, asking whom he actually likes.
He replies that there's no one he truly likes, saying it's wrong to date just for the sake of dating. She shouts in disbelief, asking why. Completely confused, he asks what's gotten into her all of a sudden. In shock, she says he must be joking. Reality hits her as panic sets in. Realizing he doesn't like her romantically, she questions the study notes he gave her, concluding he was only being kind. The girl can't believe someone would do all that without romantic intent. She remembers when he said he knew her weakness, and realizes he meant it literally. With her soul seemingly leaving her body, she starts laughing in a disturbingly unhinged way, prompting the transfer student to ask if she's okay. Unfazed by the scene, the new girl steps closer and asks him to explain a part of the lesson. He begins demonstrating the equation, saying it's easier to understand once rearranged. The first girl desperately asks for confirmation, while the transfer student, full of energy, is already asking another question. With spiraling eyes, she barely manages to stammer that they can use a formula she learned from him earlier. The boy worries if they can keep up the act, since she looks genuinely shaken, but then he notices something in her notebook. He realizes it contains more advanced problems already solved, which leads him to suspect she actually knows much more than she's pretending. The girl looks up at him with a subtle, knowing smile. Sweating nervously, he understands the truth. She's been faking ignorance all along. The situation turns into complete chaos when the transfer student, pretending to learn from him, points out a mistake in his notebook. She leans over the desk to correct it. He slides his hand beneath hers, pretending to search for something in his notes. He panics at how dangerously close she is. She whispers in his ear, complimenting how long his fingers are, and saying it's really cool. The first girl bursts with jealousy, while his expression fills with panic at the scene. The boy suddenly says that's enough for today, since she has work, and quickly leaves the room. Drained, the boy walks down the stairs wondering what's wrong with that girl, but then thinks maybe I shouldn't have left her behind. She appears at the top of the staircase, calling out for him to wait, so they can go home together, teasingly asking if his heart is made of iron. He realizes only today did he truly understand how much more complicated she is than he ever imagined. Cursing himself under his breath, the boy tries to calm down, while she asks what's wrong. He then asks if she also noticed it during the study session, and the girl nods, saying she did. She explains that she is burdened by her father's high expectations, and is desperately trying to live up to that perfect image of herself. He asks her to keep it secret, and with a soft smile, she agrees, saying she understands. He protests in disbelief that they were having a genuine moment, but she simply wonders aloud if she should tease him a little. With a playful grin, the girl says that's a completely different matter. The boy is left speechless as she leans closer and whispers in his ear that she'll make him fall in love with her. The narration then shifts to the late arriving transfer student from Class 2B, who, standing in an empty classroom, declares with firm resolve that she won't let the other girl have what she wants.
Lunchtime finally arrives at the school, and students can be heard chatting about heading to the cafeteria to grab some food. Izumi approaches Sadu and his friends to ask if they've already bought their lunch, but he's met with cold glares immediately. The guys furiously tell him to go eat with the transfer student, accusing him of coming over just to laugh at their failure at the mixer. Izumi thinks their paranoia is reaching extreme levels and tries to explain that he isn't actually dating Nanao. His friends aren't listening and demand to know why he isn't dating her if he thinks he's such a big shot. They claim they feel sorry for Nanao, and Izumi thinks they are acting like the most difficult customers in the world. They keep yelling about how Nanao is the perfect, pure type, while Izumi rolls his eyes at their description. He finally gives up and decides to eat alone while they shout insults at him for being a fake playboy. The third chapter begins with a showdown against the Ice Princess, as Izumi and Nanao sit together on a quiet school bench. Nanao asks if he usually has days where he doesn't bring a lunch box, and Izumi confirms that today just happened to be one of those rare times. He wonders to himself how she keeps managed to run into him over and over again. He asks Nanao if she always brings a bento, and she mentions that her mom makes it for her every day. Izumi starts to worry because this is the first time Shurajiku hasn't brought him lunch, and he feels bad for taking her kindness for granted. Izumi points out that some of the guys in class have been saying that she is the pure type. Nanao laughs and says that he is making her blush, but he tells her that she should just quit pretending. Izumi mentions that while she might act like a pure girl to everyone else, the version he gets to see is the little devil side of her. Nanao teases him by asking if he really thinks she has a freaky two-sided personality, before winking and adding that she will always love him regardless. Izumi strikes a confident pose and remarks that hearing something like that from a wonderful girl like her doesn't make him feel bad at all. Izumi is convinced that his flawless payback is actually working because Nanao is standing there blushing and looking completely overwhelmed. He suddenly notices something that catches his attention. Nanao looks him in the eye and confesses that she is doing all of this because she really likes him and is working hard to make him think she is a wonderful person. Izumi is caught off guard and gets flustered as she teases him for relaxing his guard for even a second. Amane suddenly pops up at the rooftop entrance with a bag in her hand, claiming that it is a total coincidence. She acts surprised to find Izumi there and says that she just happened to wander up by chance. Izumi mentions how rare it is for her to be up there, while Nanao and Amane lock eyes. The tension between Amane and Nanao becomes so thick that the air practically begins to crackle with electricity as they continue their silent staring contest. Amane ignores the tension for a moment and scoots close to Izumi, suggesting that they should all eat together. Izumi feels a weird and heavy pressure from her as he wonders what he should do now. Nanao looks over and asks Amane if she really came all that way just to chase after Izumi. The question is so direct that Amane completely loses it and spits out her milk in total shock. Amane frantically waves her hands and claims that it is just a super coincidence, while Izumi tells her to calm down and suggests that she should wipe her face first. Suddenly, a voice comments on how lively the scene is as the student council president, Shurajiku, makes a dramatic entrance with the wind blowing through her hair. Amane looks completely stunned as she hides her face with a handkerchief, wondering why the student council president is standing right there. Shurajiku greets Izumi warmly and offers him an apology, which leaves the nearby students in total shock. They can't believe that the legendary Ice Princess is actually smiling and wonder just who Izumi is to her. Amane leans in and whispers to Izumi, asking if he actually knows the president personally. Izumi starts sweating and struggles to come up with an answer. Izumi starts sweating because he thinks their relationship is definitely going to get exposed at this rate. He worries about how hard it is to explain and wonders if Hakua is really okay with talking to him in front of everyone like this. Suddenly, Hakua stands right in front of the group on the bench and points at Izumi while announcing to everyone that he is actually her fiancé. The news hits like a bomb as Amane and Nanao scream in total shock about him having a fiancé. Izumi panics and calls out to his older sister, which causes the other two to scream even louder in confusion about them being related. Hakua remains perfectly calm and raises her hand to introduce herself as the student council president, Shurajiku, to the new girl. Hakua leans in with a terrifying expression and mentions that as the heir to her family and the school president, it seems like her fiancé has been getting quite a lot of care from the transfer student lately. Izumi feels the situation has become incredibly awkward, while Hakua giggles and admits she might have gotten a bit carried away. She thinks that surely after saying all that, the new girl must finally understand the massive difference in their social status. Instead of being intimidated, Nanao gets completely fired up and shouts that love with obstacles is what really gets her going. Nanao scolds Izumi for not mentioning he had a fiancé sooner, but he tries to clarify that she is technically just his ex-fiancé. Nanao quickly decides that if the engagement is over, then there is absolutely no problem for her. Hakua glares at her rival, realizing that this rumored transfer student is much more powerful than she originally thought. As Nanao shakes a dizzy Izumi while demanding to know the truth about his relationships, Hakua acknowledges that she has found a much tougher opponent than she expected on the very first day. With a very determined look in her eyes, Hakua decides that she has to use a special move that she really didn't want to resort to until now. She stands tall on the rooftop and lifts a small bag into the air with a very serious and dramatic flair. She hands the bag to a confused Izumi and tells him that he accidentally forgot it this morning, even though he can't quite remember doing that. Hakua reveals to herself that she intentionally kept his lunch from him this morning just so she could create this specific moment. She prepares to demonstrate her superior skills by opening the bento box and picking up a piece of food. The whole group stays silent and watches in shock as Hakua moves with a sudden jolt, raising her chopsticks to feed Izumi right in front of his other admirers. The scene is illustrated by simple stick figures as the student council president tries to build up the courage to show the difference between her and her rival, while Izumi looks on with a very confused expression. She suddenly realizes that there is absolutely no way she can bring herself to do something as embarrassing as feeding him in front of other people, even though she repeats to herself how impossible it is. The president reflects on her perfect plan for a romantic bento feeding session, only to realize that it had one massive and fatal flaw that she hadn't considered before. As the cool and beautiful heir to a massive confectionery company, she is known by everyone as the legendary ice princess who is destined to lead her family's legacy. She worries that acting so lovey-dovey in public would completely shatter her professional image and the reputation she has worked so hard to build. In a moment of crisis, she thinks about the lives of all the people connected to her family's business and feels the heavy weight of her duty as an heir pushing her into a corner. Back on the rooftop, Izumi asks her what is actually happening and wonders about the strange situation, while the president stands there looking completely miserable and frozen with her chopsticks. Nanao suddenly takes charge and tells Izumi to open up while she feeds him a bite of her own food, leaving Izumi totally shocked by the bold move. As Izumi blushes and swallows the food, the student council president looks like she's been struck by lightning, while Nanao smugly asks him how it actually tasted. Izumi stammers that the food is good, but finds the sudden public feeding to be quite embarrassing, while Nanao happily mentions that she made the egg roll herself and is glad he likes it. With her heart racing, the president silently turns and walks away, leaving a confused Izumi to wonder where she is going all of a sudden. She stomps down the stairs surrounded by an intense and terrifying aura of pure rage. Her presence is so scary that she unintentionally frightens some nearby students, as she admits to herself that her defeat today was caused by her own heart's weakness. She imagines Nanao looking down on her and calling her a small fry, even though it's clearly just a product of her own frustrated imagination. In a fit of tears and anger, she declares that she has never felt so humiliated in her life and officially acknowledges Nanao as her rival, vowing to win Izumi back at any cost. The vice president of the student council is shown rushing down the hall, calling out for her superior while she hurries along. She mentions that she has been looking everywhere for her, while the president stands with her back turned and looks very determined. The president decides that there is only one way to handle the situation, which leaves the vice president feeling completely confused. Suddenly, the president slams her hand against a whiteboard and makes a bold proposal to officially ban that public feeding thing from the entire campus. Her sudden outburst is so intense that the vice president can only gasp in shock at her superior. Over in the library prep room, the girls are checking their phones and seeing the gossip in the class group chat about the rumored couple and the student council president. One of them comments on how bold the new transfer student is, while the other thinks she is just being completely shameless. The girl mentions that she just received a text from her senior as well, while her friend looks at the phone in surprise. The message explains that he is sorry and mentions that he is bringing someone new to check out the club today, which immediately makes the girls feel very suspicious. The story highlights Nanao Nanes, who is jokingly called the slayer of the losing heroines, surrounded by all her different expressions. The school bell rings and Izumi is seen dragging his feet, looking completely wiped out after a long day. He lets out a heavy sigh and mentions that he is feeling terribly tired today. Izumi reflects on how lunch was a total disaster because of the crazy things Amane and his older sister did. He pumps his fist and decides to head to the literature club after school, hoping he can finally just relax and read in peace. Suddenly, someone starts drawing letters on his back, making him jump and shout in surprise. He tells Nanao to stop doing that, but then he realizes that she's actually the one at the center of all this chaos. Nanao playfully mentions that his reaction was as if a bug had just landed on him. Izumi thinks to himself how Nanao Nanes has completely messed up his daily rhythm ever since she transferred to the school. He corrects himself, realizing that things didn't actually start with her transfer. He clearly remembers her standing right there in the hallway, bluntly telling him that she loves him and asking him to go out with her. Nanao keeps calling out to him while they walk, and Izumi feels a bit annoyed by how easily he gets rattled by her. He finds it pretty frustrating that such simple things can shake him up this much. Nanao enthusiastically tells him she is looking forward to seeing his club, but Izumi admits he was trying to forget about it. He remembers how she got stars in her eyes when she found out he was in the literature club and demanded to come observe him today. Izumi worries that he is already having enough trouble with Haru's constant pranks as it is. He thinks that with Nanao there too, it is very doubtful he will be able to get any relaxing or reading done at his club. Outside the library prep room, Nanao whispers in his ear that her archery practice was cancelled, making him tell her to stop whispering like that every time. He thinks to himself that since he already warned the first-year girls, it should be fine if she's just there to watch. As soon as they enter, Haru stands there with a terrifying look and bluntly asks the outsider to leave the room. Nanao and Izumi are caught completely off guard by her cold and hostile attitude. Izumi recalls being told that Haru only gets aggressive when she's protecting Inori, and usually, she is relatively chill. He understands why she is harsh toward him, but then he has a sudden realization about why she is acting that way toward Nanao as well. Looking down at the tiny, crowded clubroom, he realizes that the place is already cramped as it is. He concludes that Haru must just hate the idea of even more people coming in and making it even more crowded. Haru realizes that the literature club is the only point of connection between the senior and them. She recalls how the girl confessed to him on her very first day and even fed him a lunch box in public, so she decides she has to stop this shameless intruder. Inori enthusiastically welcomes the guest and tells Haru not to mind her, eventually dragging the protesting Haru away as she screams in frustration. Haru whispers to the new girl to ask what she's actually planning, but the girl thinks that she really hates to be the one to break the news to Haru. She bluntly tells Haru that she loses for taking too much time, which causes Haru to shout and call her a total traitor. Izumi tries to explain that the new girl isn't bad and is actually just a cute junior, but he notes that she doesn't seem bothered at all by the tension. Nanao wonders if he was in the archery club at his old school, but he clarifies that he's just trying to have some normal small talk with her. She suddenly invites him on a date for the coming weekend, leaving Izumi totally confused about which part of their conversation led to that suggestion. Inori is shocked and excited about the mention of a date, while Haru watches with a very suspicious and annoyed expression. Nanao explains that she just wants someone to show her around Tokyo since her previous school was in the countryside, and Izumi admits he can't really turn down a simple request like that. Haru goes on a massive nagging streak, telling him that being the club president doesn't give him the right to flirt or treat the room as his private property, forcing Izumi to apologize. Haru looks down with a blush and starts to stammer as if she has something else on her mind. Izumi points out that she was making quite a bold promise for a date, but Haru immediately goes into a panic and starts screaming that she wasn't. Haru begins shaking and crying as she asks if the two of them are actually going out, while Inori thinks the whole situation is legendary and captures the moment on her phone. Izumi quickly denies the rumor and reminds her that he only just met the girl, which makes Haru's eyes shine with relief while the transfer student lets out a bored sound. Izumi mentions that there isn't really anyone he would even think about wanting to go out with in the first place. Haru reacts to this news while Inori thinks to herself that this also means Haru still has a chance. Izumi notes that the conversation is lively, but asks if they should start club activities soon. Inori tells Haru to listen and says that just finding out they aren't dating is already good enough for now. Inori says that Haru must not give him any more of a bad impression right now. Izumi wonders if everyone around him has been acting strange lately. Nanao tells Izumi that he is too fast. Izumi says that he is sorry because he doesn't know how to pace himself. Nanao asks him if he is ready yet and tells him to hold on just a little longer. Nanao points out that those two have a certain mood going and tells him he can turn the page now. Haru asks what is with that way of reading. Izumi thinks that on the contrary, this is probably foreshadowing that something tragic is going to happen. Haru asks if it is really necessary to be that close or why two people are reading a single book. She tells them that above all, they should be quiet when reading. Inori wonders if Haru can really say that about others. Nanao says that in that case, she will give a signal when she wants the page turned so they don't have to use their voices. Izumi says sorry about that. He wonders if it wouldn't be better if each person just held a book. The room is silent for a moment. Suddenly, Izumi reacts as if something happened. Nanao reaches over to touch and pinch Izumi's leg. Izumi asks her what that is supposed to be. Nanao continues to touch and stroke Izumi's leg. Izumi reacts with a sound. The other girls react to what they are seeing with many questions. Haru asks Inori what exactly those two are doing. Inori replies that she is wondering about that too. Izumi thinks that this is surely a pretty bad situation and asks what the girl is even doing. Nanao calls out to Izumi and asks him what is wrong. Nanao tells him to hurry up and turn the page because she has been giving him the signal for a while now. Izumi asks her what kind of signal that is. Haru suddenly stands up from her seat. Haru takes a long, deep breath to steady herself as she steps away from the others and starts heading out of the room. Suddenly, she stops and screams at the top of her lungs, demanding to know if the room has somehow turned into a hostess bar. She keeps her distance in the hallway, looking back inside while shouting again in total disbelief about the situation and questioning if she's really seeing a hostess bar setup. She grits her teeth in frustration, thinking about how reading together is basically cheating and wondering what everyone is trying to pull, finally deciding that she isn't going to let them play her like that. With a burst of energy, she charges back into the room and plops herself down right between them, catching both Izumi and the other girl completely by surprise. She loudly declares that she is joining their reading session too, leaving Izumi desperately asking Inori to say something to stop her. Instead of helping, Inori starts recording the whole thing on her phone because she thinks it looks hilarious, making Izumi realize that she's actually enjoying the chaos and is totally hopeless. Haru gets right in Izumi's face and tells him to hurry up and open the book, comparing a second of hesitation to losing an intense video game, which makes him wonder if she thinks life is a first-person shooter. She starts to shout about what she's doing while they flirt, but she suddenly freezes mid-sentence and goes completely quiet. Her face turns bright red as she panics internally, wondering what on earth she was even about to blurt out just a second ago. She realizes how close she came to saying something super weird in the heat of the moment, and concludes that the simple fact she's fighting to sit next to him and read the same book already reveals her true feelings. Izumi jolts in surprise and asks if she's really doing okay, mentioning that her behavior has been definitely strange all day. Suddenly, she just lets go and falls straight back with a loud shout, but Inori luckily slides in to catch her, casually mentioning that this kind of thing happens sometimes. She slowly drags herself back up, looking completely drained of energy. Finally, she wobbles toward the door and says she is going home now, while Inori quickly follows behind to say goodbye to her senior and keep an eye on her friend. Izumi stands by the library prep room doors and tries to smooth things over by telling the transfer student that it's fine, even though she apologizes for things getting a bit weird. Amane watches them closely and comments that Izumi is actually quite popular with the other girls. The transfer student points out that he is clearly adored by his cute junior, specifically mentioning the one who acts like a total tsundere but without any of the actual sweetness. Izumi is left fumbling for words, wondering if being adored is really the right way to describe how that girl treats him. Nanao mentions how much she is looking forward to the coming weekend, but Izumi feels the need to quickly confirm that their plans are definitely not a date. Down the hall, Inori tells Haru that she really needs to start being more honest with her feelings. She warns her friend that the senior is definitely going to be stolen away if she keeps acting so stubborn and difficult. Inori continues to push by mentioning that the two of them are already planning a date for the weekend, while Haru is just sitting there dragging her feet. Suddenly, two familiar faces appear right behind the juniors as Amane calls out to them. She asks for their attention and wonders if they would mind explaining exactly what they were just talking about. Both Amane and the student council president loom over the two first years with terrifying, shadowed expressions. They demand to hear every single detail about the conversation regarding the senior and his supposed weekend date. Haru and Inori are left completely petrified and shaking in fear, realizing they have accidentally summoned the two most dangerous rivals in the entire school.